Hey guys, this is Focus Space's training video on flooring. So let's get into this. Right now we have the flooring under limit laid out. That's pretty straightforward. We're laying it out across the whole floor. Obviously we're going up to the edge. It doesn't have to be right up to the wall. You can leave about a 1/4 inch just to give you a little bit of play. And then we're taping all those seams. Making sure everything is nice and even, everything has no overlap. Each one of these seams needs to be flush without a bump. Any bumps are going to cause obvious bumps in your flooring. So just making sure that's all nice and level, nice and even before we get started. Now what we've done, Wesley has already cut our starter strips, that's what we're calling them, kind of similar to doing your roofing, but you got a full piece of flooring that's about 4 feet long. So what we're doing is we're cutting a 3-foot strip, 2 foot, and a 1 foot. And this gives us our pattern for the flooring layout. So essentially we're doing our staggered pattern, and it's gonna give us a nice even look across the whole floor. So we are starting on this corner, always starting on a corner, obviously. This first row is one of the most important rows to get really, really nice and straight and even, because if this row is off, your whole floor, you're gonna be fighting it. And so what we're gonna do is, this is a floating floor, so we're not doing any attaching to the ground or the walls. This is all just gonna be sitting on top of the under limit. That's why they call it a floating floor, because the whole thing can actually float and move and expand when it heats up and cools down. So here's our first piece. In this case, we're gonna move right to left. It doesn't really matter which way you're going. You can go back and forth down the build, or down the line as you go. But a couple things we're gonna need obviously is your tape, a mallet, pencils, and a Sharpie for marking for your cutter. So I'll come in here, you can see each piece has 2 different sides. You've got the tongue side, which we call it, has a little bit wider of a lip, and then this is the butt side. So the tongue side obviously snaps into here. You can see the bottom has a groove where that fits in. And so basically each piece, we wanna make sure it's seated properly, and then both of these edges are lined up as we're going on this first row. So we'll start off here. What you wanna do is give it a little bit of an angle. You wanna make sure both edges here and here are perfectly lined up. Give it some pressure, and then we're gonna set it down. And if you need to on this first row, you can go ahead and give that a tap to help seat that in. Make sure that sits in really nicely. And then what you end up with, if you look here, you should have a nice clean line without any kind of divot. You shouldn't see any darkness in there. So that's nice. We got both our edges lined up, so we're gonna keep doing that down the line here on the next one. So now that last piece is not gonna be a full, so we're gonna get a measurement for our cutter. So from the wall, I like to leave about an 1/8 inch of extra space. This is also important. Make sure your underlayment's sitting flat and not bunched up, otherwise that's going to cause issues too. So from the drywall, we're measuring not to that lip there, you're actually measuring to the edge, the hard edge of your flooring here where my fingernail is. So right now we're sitting at 36 and 15/16, so let's just take an 1/8 off. Let's say, basically, let's just call it 36 3/4. And that gives you a little bit of play on that edge, because you don't want to be super tight against the wall either. It's just going to make it harder to install. So giving it about an 1/8. Wesley's gonna go cut that piece, and then we'll come back and put that in. All right, so Wesley's got that piece cut. So again, same process here. We're gonna get that seated in nicely. Let it sit, get some pressure. And now the other handy tool to have on this project is either a flat bar or a cat's paw like this. So you can get in your edges. I like to put a knee on it, and that's how you can get some pressure in. It's almost impossible to do it without something to pry. So again, if you need to come up, give it an extra angle to get that seated. There we go. And then we'll just do one more little push. There we go. And then we want to recenter it, so we're about the same spacing on this wall as we are over on that wall. And then just come back along, check each of your seams, check each of your edges here, making sure that these are flush, because if that is off, that's going to cause you issues down the line here. So, and this edge looks nice. So we're ready to go on to our next row. So this is where we're gonna start using our starter strips. So I'm gonna lay these out so it's more obvious. So here's our next one. This is gonna be our 3-foot. So essentially what we're doing is we're going 4, 3, 2, 1 down the line. Pretty straightforward. So here's a process for getting the next piece in. This is, now that we've got the first row, second row becomes a lot easier. So same kind of process, we give it an angle. This time we're coming obviously from the sides, and I like to slide them into place. That kind of helps seat it. If it doesn't, sometimes people just try to push it in like this and then down, but if you give it a little slide, it really helps it lock it in nicely. Sliding it down the line. This one doesn't even need any tapping. So on the next one, we might need to tap it just slightly, so I'll have my mallet handy. Occasionally, if this line, you just want to look here, make sure you can't see any black. There's no gap, everything's nice and consistent. So there's our starter. Now we're going to go back to a full piece, all the way down our row like we've been. And this is where it gets a little more complicated, because now we have to do two things. We have to get it into our edge here first, like we've been doing, and then we also have to get it into this edge. So by doing that, I like to get a knee on the piece I'm working on. Wesley, if you want to come on this side, actually. I want to get this lip in as close as we can first, and then give it an angle. And I like to grab from underneath and just start tapping that into place, making sure that one didn't move on us. And then, yeah, this one's actually already done. Sometimes you have to work it a little bit. I like to give it a tap back that way as well. Keep things nice and tight. Check your seam here. Check your seam down the line here, all the way what you just did. Every single time, check your seams, because if your seams are off and you get halfway across your floor, you're gonna have to rip things back up to fix one. So really make sure you're just taking your time on each piece. Don't rush it, and yeah, just pay attention to each little detail. So same thing, you come in, we're gonna give it an angle, get that pretty close to flush, and then, see, I'm a little too tight there, so I'm gonna come out just slightly down, and then this one, and you do have to kind of pull this existing or the previous piece up with this one as you do your angle. So again, I like to put a knee on, hand underneath, give it a tap. This one here needs a little more on this side. Give it a tap. You can see I've got gap there. Tap until it goes in. And then this one, we've got a crack here, so that means I need to tap that way as well until I take that gap out. So now we got that sealed up nicely. And in a way you can tell if something's off. See, we've got a little bit of play here on the flooring. That means something isn't quite tapped into place. So I'll keep your hand off there. Yeah. I'm gonna tap that a little more until it'll sit flat. All right, sweet. So that is the first two rows. We'll go over our final row at the end of the video. All right, guys, so we're down to our final piece here. So Wesley has ripped these down, just figuring out which side needs to be ripped, obviously. So we took the tongue side off. We're leaving the butt side because that's going to be sitting in like this. So really, this last couple pieces, you don't need the mallet for. It is kind of finicky. So again, same process as we do before. You're going to get your edge in first. Get that as tight as you can. Make sure that seam looks good. Lay it down. And this is where it gets fun, because really all we're going to be doing is using our mallet to pry it. Some go in a lot easier than others. And then careful not to go too high on your drywall or you'll start cracking things. Boom. You want to hear the snap? See how we got a crack here? Press that until we still don't see a crack. And then you hear that snap. That's a great sign. And then give it a little tap down the line to make sure it sits down nicely. And then once we put our base trim on, that's going to hold all that down and keep things really nice and tucked in. So that is it for flooring.